Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel where we dive deep into the fascinating world of rare and valuable coins that could be hiding right in your pocket change if you're a coin collector. The 1943 Lincoln steel penny with the S Mint mark is one of the most interesting coins from the World War II era, and it stands out immediately because it looks different from nearly every other Lincoln cent ever produced. In 1943, the United States Mint made a major change in the composition of the 1-cent coin, switching from the traditional copper alloy to a zinc-coated steel planchette. This decision was directly connected to the ongoing war effort, where copper was urgently needed for military equipment, especially shell casings and communications wiring. As a result, the penny struck in 1943 became a true wartime coin, carrying the unmistakable gray-silver tone of steel instead of the familiar reddish color of copper. Your coin, marked with the S Mint mark beneath the date, was produced at the San Francisco Mint, which contributed a large share of these special steel cents in fine condition. A 1943 steel penny still shows a clear outline of Abraham Lincoln's profile, although the high points, like the hair, cheek, and coat, may display signs of flattening. The lettering and date remained fully readable, even if softened by circulation. The zinc coating that protects the steel core may show some darkening or small patches of wear, especially if the coin has acquired scratches over the decades. Such surface marks are extremely common in circulated steel pennies, as the softer coating tends to show signs of handling more quickly than traditional copper coins. On the reverse, the wheat ears remain visible, framing the United States of America inscription. Some fine lines in the wheat design may be faint or blended due to years of use, but the central features remain recognizable. What makes this coin interesting to collectors is not only its unique metal composition, but also the historical story behind it. These pennies were part of the everyday life of Americans during one of the most challenging periods in modern history. Millions of people used them daily without thinking much about why they looked different. Yet today, they capture an entire era in their design and metal alone. Even the scratches on your coin tell part of that story. They reflect long circulation, countless hands, pockets, and cash drawers, and decades of movement before finally settling into a collector's possession. Because the 1943 steel penny had such a large mintage, and because many survived, its value today depends heavily on condition. In fine condition, with some scratches, a typical 1943 steel penny falls into a modest value range. Many price guides place circulated examples from San Francisco between about 30 cents and around 75 cents, depending on how clean the surfaces are and how much eye appeal the coin maintains. A coin graded at the lower end of fine condition, especially with noticeable scratches, usually sits closer to the lower portion of that range. However, collectors still enjoy owning a genuine wartime steel penny, even if its market price is not very high. Higher-grade coins, particularly those with bright surfaces and minimal blemishes, can command stronger prices. But the coin you are describing, with its circulated wear and visible scratches, represents a typical example that would likely sell in the range of 30 to 60 cents. It is not rare, yet it remains desirable because nearly every collector of Lincoln cents wants to include at least one steel penny from each mint, Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco, in their set. The S Mint mark adds a little interest because San Francisco minted coins often attract collectors who focus on mint varieties, even though the value is modest. The coin carries strong historical appeal. It stands as a physical reminder of the choices the nation made during wartime, when necessities pushed the mint to alter long-standing traditions. Many of these steel pennies were later withdrawn from circulation, and some even rusted if their zinc coating wore off, leaving fewer well-preserved pieces than the original mintage might suggest. The example you have, even with scratches, still holds its structure well and continues to display all major design elements clearly. which makes it a worthwhile piece for any numismatic collection. First up, the collection takes us back almost a full century to the year 1926, a time deeply rooted in America's history and shaped by the rhythm of the Roaring Twenties. This coin is the 1926 Abraham Lincoln wheat penny without a mint mark, meaning it was produced at the Philadelphia Mint, even though it carries a cut line and some scratches, and is described as being in good condition. It still holds an interesting place in the world of coin collecting. Each mark on this coin reflects not just age, but a long journey through real circulation in an era when a single penny had true purchasing power and genuine importance in daily life. The design of the coin remains one of the most loved in American numismatics. The obverse features the familiar portrait of Abraham Lincoln created by Victor David Brenner, a design introduced in 1909 and still used today. On your 1926 penny, Lincoln's portrait remains visible, though with a level of wear consistent with many decades of use. The hair and beard details are softer than on a higher-grade coin, and some of the sharp features of his face have smoothed down. But the overall appearance remains strong enough to instantly identify the coin. The word Liberty and the date, 1926, are still readable, even if they appear lighter due to circulation. The cut line is an additional mark on the coin, usually caused by contact with sharp objects or edges during its life. It does not originate from the mint and is instead a sign of the coin being actively used over many years. On the reverse side, the classic wheat ear design continues to tell the story of the coin's long life. The two wheat stalks on either side, which originally had crisp, detailed lines, now appear smoother from the wear of nearly 100 years. Even so, the inscriptions 1 cent and United States of America are clearly visible. Above them, the motto E pluribus unum may show some fading, but it remains identifiable. The scratches mentioned are normal for a coin of this age and grade and simply show the natural effects of being handled, exchanged, and carried through countless daily transactions in the early, mid-1900s. The year 1926 sits at an interesting point in American history. The country was experiencing economic growth, advancements in industry, and shifts in culture. Automobiles were becoming more common, radios were entering homes, and cities were rapidly expanding. But despite all the modernization, everyday life was still simple compared to today. And pennies like this one were essential in daily purchases. A single cent had real buying power. It could contribute to buying groceries, pay for small treats, or be saved by children in tin money boxes. It might have passed through the hands of factory workers, farmers, shopkeepers, or families trying to stretch their budgets. Thinking about where this coin might have traveled over the decades adds a sense of charm and mystery to owning it in a collector's market today. The 1926 wheat penny without mint mark in good condition generally carries a modest value. Typically, examples like yours range from around 20 cents up to about $1 depending on the amount of wear and the impact of the cut line. While it is not considered a rare coin, it is still desirable for collectors who enjoy the wheat penny series from the early 20th century. Many collectors seek one example from each year, and the 1926 penny fits nicely into that timeline. Its value comes not from rarity, but from the history it represents and the nostalgia it brings. What makes this coin special is not just its physical condition, but the era it survived. After being struck in 1926, it likely remained in circulation through the Great Depression, when every penny mattered and families relied on small change to get through difficult days. It almost certainly circulated during the wartime 1940s and the economic boom that followed. The cut line and scratches are reminders that this penny lived a long life in the hands of real people, facing real experiences in American history. Coins like this did not sit untouched in a drawer. Instead, they moved through decades of daily routines, workdays, store purchases, and savings. Next up, the 1943 Lincoln. Steel penny without a mint mark is one of the most recognizable and talked about coins in American coin collecting, mainly because of its unusual material and the powerful history it carries. In 1943, the United States Mint made a dramatic change to the penny's composition, switching from the traditional bronze alloy to a completely different metal, zinc-coated steel. This wartime change was necessary because copper was redirected to support World War II production, especially for ammunition and essential military wiring. As a result, the steel penny became the only regular-issue U.S. cent made primarily out of steel, giving it a distinct silver-gray color that stands out immediately from every other Lincoln cent ever produced. Your coin. The 1943 penny, without a mint mark, was struck at the Philadelphia Mint. Philadelphia produced the largest quantity of steel pennies during that year, which makes this version the most common of the three 1943 varieties. Even so, the coin remains a favorite among collectors because it represents an important moment in American history. In good condition, the coin shows moderate signs of circulation. Lincoln's portrait is still clearly visible with defined outlines, though the high points, such as the cheek, jaw, and hair, may appear softened from years of use. The date remains bold and readable, and the motto "In God We Trust" continues to stand out along the upper rim. The coin's surfaces may show some uneven color, light darkening and spots, or scratches from its long journey through circulation. Scratches on these coins are incredibly common. The zinc coating can wear down or mark easily, and once the coating is disturbed, the steel underneath may begin to show darker patches or slight discoloration. These natural marks tell the story of how the coin was handled throughout its lifetime. They can range from tiny hairline marks to slightly deeper lines that caught on other coins or surfaces over the years. Even with these scratches, coins in good condition still hold a strong collectible identity, because they maintain most major design features clearly enough to be appreciated. In today's market, the value of a 1943 steel penny without a mint mark depends heavily on its condition. Since this is the most common version of the steel penny, circulated examples are widely available. For a coin in good condition with noticeable scratches, the typical market value today ranges from around 10 cents to about 30 cents. Some pieces may fall slightly above or below that range, depending on the coin's overall eye appeal, the evenness of its surfaces, and whether the scratches are light or more visible. Coins with heavy damage fall toward the lower end of the range, while cleaner examples then within the same grade rise toward the upper end. Higher grade examples, such as those in extremely fine or uncirculated condition, can be worth more. But a normally circulated 1943 steel penny still retains its value as a historical collectible, even if the dollar amount is modest. Many collectors enjoy adding this coin to their sets because it is a signature part of the Lincoln cent story. And nearly every beginner collector looks for at least one authentic 1943 steel penny to include in their collection. The next coin we are exploring is the 1942 Abraham Lincoln Wheat penny with a D mint mark, a piece struck at the Denver Mint during an important time in American history. This coin comes from a period when the United States was on the edge of major wartime changes and every part of the economy, including the production of small coins like this one, was beginning to shift. Even though this penny shows some scratches from circulation, it is described as being in fine condition, which means it has held on to a good amount of its original detail despite spending many years in everyday use. A coin in fine condition still carries a clear portrait of Abraham Lincoln, readable inscriptions, and visible wheat ears on the reverse, making it a nice example for collectors who appreciate both historical significance and respectable preservation. When you look at the obverse of the 1942 D penny, Lincoln's portrait stands out with a natural level of wear. In fine condition, the high points, such as the cheek, jawline, and parts of the hair may appear slightly smooth, but the overall design remains strong and well-defined. The date 1942 is sharp and fully readable, and the D mint mark is still clear below the year. The word Liberty may have light wear, but remains easily visible. Some scratches across the surface are natural for a coin that circulated during a time when millions of people relied on small change for everyday purchases. These marks do not erase the character of the coin. Instead, they reveal the path it has traveled. Turning the coin over, the reverse displays the classic wheat ear design that gives these coins their famous nickname, wheat pennies, in fine condition. The wheat stalks still show portions of the original lines and structure, though not as crisp as in higher grades. The central inscriptions, 1 cent and United States of America, are bold and clear. The motto, E pluribus unum, at the top may show minor fading, but it remains readable. The scratches mentioned are consistent with the coin's age and natural wear from decades of handling. Even with these marks, the overall appearance remains attractive to collectors who prefer coins with a balance of age and preserved detail. In 1942, the nation was preparing for major changes due to World War II. Factories were shifting to wartime. Production materials were becoming scarce, and copper, used in pennies, would soon be needed for ammunition and military equipment. Just 1 year later, in 1943, the U.S. Mint temporarily switched from copper to steel to conserve copper for the war. This makes the 1942 pennies interesting because they represent the final year before that historic change. People during that time carried pennies like this every day, whether they were factory workers, farmers, store clerks, soldiers returning home on leave, or children walking to school with small change in their pockets. Every scratch on the coin is a sign of its real history in real hands. In today's market, a 1942D wheat penny in fine condition typically carries a modest but respectable value. Most examples sell for around 20 to 50 cents, depending on the exact level of detail and the presence of any surface marks. While not considered a rare date, the fine condition makes it more desirable than heavily worn pieces. Collectors often prefer coins in this grade because they show a strong balance between original detail and natural signs of aging. A coin like this is often used in filling day-tanned mint mark sets, teaching new collectors about condition grades, or appreciating early 1940s coinage. What makes this coin appealing is not just its value, but the moment in history it represents. A 1942D penny carries the atmosphere of an America preparing for war, adjusting to rationing and transitioning into a new economic era. For many people at that time, even a single penny had importance. It could help someone buy a small treat, contribute to the cost of transportation, or be saved with dozens of others to buy something meaningful. Holding a coin from this period makes it easier to picture the daily life of ordinary Americans who lived through uncertain but transformative years. Next up, the 1943 Lincoln Steel penny with the D mint mark is one of the most recognizable and fascinating coins from the World War II era. A coin that immediately stands out because of its bright silver-gray appearance. In 1943, the United States Mint made a major shift in the material used to produce pennies. Instead of the traditional copper composition used since the early 1900s, the Mint switched to zinc-coated steel for 1 year. This change happened because copper was essential for war production, especially for ammunition, electrical wiring, and military communication equipment. With copper supplies redirected to the battlefield, the Mint created millions of steel pennies that carried the same design but a completely different metal, making the 1943 series a historic and unforgettable part of American coinage. Your coin was minted in Denver, which is identified by the small D mint mark placed just below the date. The Denver Mint produced hundreds of millions of these steel cents, though fewer than the Philadelphia Mint. Even though they are not rare, they remain highly collectible because of their unique metal and their strong connection to the wartime period. A steel penny in very fine condition shows clear signs of circulation, but still retains sharp detail. On your coin, Lincoln's portrait remains well defined, with strong visibility in his facial features, hair, and clothing. While some wear as expected on the highest points of the design, the details remain crisp enough to appreciate. The motto "In God We Trust" along the top rim, and the words Liberty and the date remain bold and easily readable, even in very fine condition. These coins often show scratches on the surfaces, and your coin is no exception. Scratches are extremely common on 1943 steel pennies, because the zinc coating can wear or mark easily during circulation. Over time, these scratches can create slightly dull or uneven spots on the coin's surface. They do not necessarily ruin the coin's appeal. Instead, they are simply evidence of the coin's long life in circulation. These marks tell the story of the many hands, pockets, and transactions the coin has passed through before finally becoming a collectible item. When it comes to the value of a 1943D steel penny in today's market, condition is a key factor. Very fine condition is a mid-grade level, showing noticeable but not heavy wear, and still holding most of its original design. Because the 1943D is common, especially in circulated grades, its value remains modest. In the current market, a 1943D steel penny in very fine condition with some scratches generally sells between about 15 cents and around 40 cents. Coins with fewer scratches and better eye appeal fall toward the upper end of this range, while those with more noticeable marks sit near the lower end, even though the market value is not high. The historical value of this coin is far more significant. It is a piece of the World War II home front story, a symbol of how everyday life in the United States changed to support the war effort. Millions of Americans used these coins without realizing they were holding a piece of wartime history. Today, collectors appreciate them not only for their unusual metal, but also for the deeper meaning behind their production. The next coin in this collection is the 1941 Abraham Lincoln wheat penny without any mint mark. A common yet meaningful piece from the Philadelphia Mint. This coin comes in a natural brown color shade, a tone that many older copper pennies develop over time as they age and react with the environment. The rich brown surface gives it a classic, antique appearance that collectors often appreciate, especially when the coin still holds much of its original detail. Being in good condition, it shows moderate wear from years of circulation. But the important features of the design remain clear enough to admire. Even after more than 80 years, this penny still reflects the strength of its craftsmanship, carrying with it the history of early 1940s. America. The obverse of the coin features Abraham Lincoln's profile, and while some details on his clothing and hair may appear softly worn, the overall portrait remains easily recognizable. The date 1941 stands out clearly without distortion, and the motto "In God We Trust" is fully readable across the top. On the reverse, the wheat stalks, which give this series its name, still retain visible lines, though some definition may be softened from circulation. The lettering 1 cent and United States of America stays intact, showing that the coin has been handled but not overly damaged. The brown shade that covers the surface adds depth to the coin's character, blending with small scratches that formed naturally over decades of everyday used coins in good condition, like this one, sit in that middle ground where they have experienced enough wear to show their age but remain appealing to collectors for their authenticity. Circulated wheat pennies from 1941 are not rare since millions were minted, but collectors value them for completing sets, studying variations, or simply appreciating the long history of the Lincoln Cent series. Even though scratches may be visible, they do not take away from the coin's collectible nature. Instead, they serve as reminders of how many hands the coin passed through, from grocery counters to savings jars, from wages to wartime budgets during a significant era in American life just before the United States entered. World War II. In today's market, a 1941 Lincoln wheat penny without a mint mark in good condition holds a modest value. Because these coins were produced in large numbers, they are widely available, and their prices remain accessible to collectors of all levels. Typically, a piece like this, with its brown tone and light surface marks, sells for around 5 cents to 50 cents depending on overall eye appeal, buyer interest, and the exact level of wear. While the financial value is small, the historical value is far greater, making it a meaningful addition to any collection of early Lincoln cents. For anyone building a date set of wheat pennies, the 1941 issue is an important piece that represents the final years before wartime coinage changes. Even in good condition, it provides a solid representation of the series' classic design. Its combination of age, natural patina, and preserved details makes it a charming coin to hold and study. Every scratch and color change tells a bit more of its journey, reminding us that sometimes the most ordinary coins carry the richest stories. Next up, the 1938 Abraham Lincoln wheat penny without a mint mark is another interesting and enjoyable coin for collectors who appreciate the long history of the Lincoln cent series. Struck at the Philadelphia Mint, this coin represents a time when the United States was still recovering from the Great Depression and preparing for major global changes that would follow in the coming years. The Philadelphia Mint did not use a mint mark at that time, so any 1938 penny without a letter under the date automatically comes from that mint. Even though millions were produced, finding an example in extra fine condition with strong detail and original charm still makes it a solid collector piece in extra fine condition. A 1938 wheat penny shows clear sharpness in the majority of its design. On your coin, Abraham Lincoln's portrait remains well defined, with the outline of the hair, the forehead, the beard, and the clothing folds still strong and visible. The high points of the design may show light wear from circulation, but nothing heavy or distracting. You can still see the texture in Lincoln's hair and the softness of the facial features, which is typical of an extra fine grade. The motto, "In God We Trust," curves cleanly above his head. The word liberty stands boldly to the left. And the date 1938 remains sharply readable, even though the coin is extra fine. The surfaces still show some scratches, which is completely normal for a wheat penny that has circulated. These scratches may appear as light lines or small marks scattered across the coin, showing how it passed through hands, pockets, and cash registers before eventually being saved. None of these scratches are severe enough to spoil the detail, but they give the coin its own personality and a sense of the life it has lived. Collectors understand that circulation marks are common and expected, especially in coins minted nearly 90 years ago. When discussing the value of this coin in today's market, it's important to consider that while the 1938 penny is not rare, its condition has a big influence on price. Lower-grade circulated examples are very common and typically worth only a few cents each. But extra-fine examples stand out because they show strong design detail and better surfaces, even with some scratches. A 1938 no-mint mark penny in extra-fine condition generally sells between about 50 cents and around $1 in the current market. Coins with fewer scratches and a more attractive surface tend to fall near the top of this range, while examples with more visible marks usually fall closer to the lower end, even though the value is modest. This coin still holds a strong place in the Lincoln penny series. It represents the pre-war years and is part of the beloved decades of wheat pennies that collectors always enjoy completing. The 1930s are especially popular among collectors because many coins from that era saw heavy circulation, and finding sharp examples is always satisfying. The grainy texture of the wheat stalks, the fine detail in Lincoln's beard, and the boldness of the inscriptions all contribute to its appeal. The next coin in this collection is the 1939 Abraham Lincoln wheat penny without any mint mark, a small yet meaningful piece of American numismatic history. This coin was struck at the Philadelphia Mint, which traditionally did not use a mint mark for Lincoln cents during this era. Holding a 1939 penny gives a sense of stepping back into a time when the country was emerging from the Great Depression and the world was inching closer to the beginning of World War II. The Lincoln cent had already been in circulation for 30 years by then, and its familiar wheatback design had become an everyday symbol of American currency. Even so, every individual coin carries its own journey, and this particular one, preserved in very fine condition, still shows a satisfying amount of detail that collectors appreciate. When a coin reaches very fine condition, it means the high points of the design show slight wear but remain well defined. On this 1939 penny, Abraham Lincoln's portrait still has noticeable detail in his hair and beard, although there may be light flattening on the cheek and jaw. The lettering around the rim generally remains clear, and the date appears crisp and readable. The reverse of the coin, featuring the iconic wheat stalks, still shows clear lines within the wheat grains, though with some softening from years of handling. The coin also has some scratches, which is common for a piece that has been in circulation for more than 8 decades. These small marks do not make the coin unusual. Instead, they hint at countless pockets, hands, and transactions it may have passed through before becoming a collectible item. Collectors who seek wheat pennies often appreciate pieces like this because they strike a balance between affordability and preserved detail. A 1939 penny without a mint mark is not considered rare, as millions were minted, but condition plays a major role in its desirability. A very fine example still holds charm and historical value without the high price associated with uncirculated or rarer varieties. Today's coin market values these coins modestly, as they are accessible to both beginner and casual collectors, in very fine condition with minor scratches. A typical 1939 Philadelphia wheat penny generally sells in the range of a few cents to around $1, depending on the buyer, the level of eye appeal, and current market demand. Even though the price might seem small, the real value lies in its connection to American history and the early legacy of the Lincoln cent series. Another fascinating part of this coin is the craftsmanship of its era. The design created by Victor David Brenner had already become iconic by 1939, and the wheatback reverse, used until 1958, symbolizes an important chapter in U.S. coinage. Many collectors accumulate wheat pennies to complete full day 10 mint-mark sets, and the 1939 piece is a necessary part of that journey. For someone compiling such a set, finding a coin in very fine condition with solid details still remaining is often satisfying, especially when the coin preserves much of its original charm despite light marks and natural wear. While it may not be a rare treasure, this penny serves as a reminder of everyday American life in the late 1930s and early 1940s. It circulated at a time when the average wage was low, when every cent carried more purchasing power than today, and when saving small change was common among families living through economic uncertainty. Coins like this passed through shops, factories, farms, and ordinary households across the country. They played a role in daily routines long before they became collectible objects. The scratches, the softened details, and the slight fading all contribute to its story rather than diminish it. Next up, the 1958 Abraham Lincoln wheat penny without a mint mark is one of the final coins from the long-running wheat penny series, making it an important piece for collectors who appreciate the closing chapter of a historic design. Struck at the Philadelphia Mint, the absence of a mint mark under the date tells us exactly where it was made. This year marked the end of an era, because after 1958, the United States Mint retired the wheat ears on the reverse and introduced the famous Lincoln Memorial design starting in 1959. That makes any 1958 wheat cent feel like a final farewell to the classic design that Americans used for half a century. Your coin Showing a natural brown color shade reflects the typical look of an older copper coin. Copper darkens and deepens in tone over the decades as it passes through hands, pockets, and environments. The coin's warm brown patina is expected and even appreciated by collectors because it shows the authenticity and age of the coin. In fine condition, this 1958 penny still holds clear visibility of all major features, even though it has experienced noticeable circulation. Abraham Lincoln's portrait remains well-formed, though the highest points, such as the cheekbone, jawline, and hair curls, show wear from years of handling. The rims remain mostly complete, the lettering stands clear, and the date 1958 is sharp and easily readable. Some scratches can be seen on the surface, which is normal for a wheat penny of this age and condition. These scratches may appear as small diagonal lines, gentle marks, or contact points where the coin rubbed against others in circulation. In fine condition, such marks are expected, and they do not take away from the overall character of the coin. Instead, they show the journey the coin made through everyday transactions, from grocery counters to taxi fares to pocket change in the 1950s. This penny passed through the hands of regular Americans living their daily lives before eventually becoming part of a collector's world, because 1958 was the final year of wheat penny production. It is a very popular year for collectors. However, the Philadelphia Mint produced a very large quantity of these coins, so they are not rare. As a result, the value depends mostly on condition. Lower grade or heavily worn 1958 pennies, without a mint mark, are very common and usually worth only a few cents. But in fine condition, with clear detail and a natural brown color, the value rises slightly. Even with some scratches, the typical market value for a 1958 no-mint mark wheat penny in fine condition usually falls between about 10 cents and 25 cents in today's market. Coins with fewer marks, stronger eye appeal, and smoother surfaces may fall toward the higher end of this range, even though the dollar value is small. This coin carries emotional and historical weight. It represents the last breath of the wheat penny era, a design that many collectors consider one of the most beautiful and classic ever used on United States coinage. From 1909 to 1958. The wheat ears design symbolized growth, stability, and the American spirit. Holding a 1958 wheat penny is like holding the final chapter of a book that ran for 5 full decades. Your coin still captures that history. Its fine condition, the remaining strength in its design, and the natural brown patina all show a coin that has lived a full life but kept its visual identity intact. The scratches add character rather than harm, reminding us that this coin was part of the real everyday economy before finding its place as a collectible. Even though the monetary value is modest, the sentimental and historical value is far larger. The next coin in this collection is the 1958 Abraham Lincoln wheat penny without any mint mark, a coin that represents the final year of the iconic wheatback design. This particular piece comes in a brown color shade, showing the natural toning that copper coins develop over time. The brown surface blends with areas of dirt and aging, giving the coin a rugged, time-worn appearance that clearly reflects its long circulation history. Even though it is in dirty condition and shows some scratches across both sides, the important details are still visible enough to tell its story and appreciate its place in American numismatic history. On the obverse, Abraham Lincoln's portrait remains the centerpiece, though the fine lines around his hair, cheek, and collar show noticeable wear. The dirt settled into parts of the design highlights the contrast between raised and flat surfaces. The date 1958 is still clear and readable, positioned just under Lincoln's profile, and it immediately reminds collectors that this coin belongs to the last year before the transition to the memorial reverse in 1959. The motto, "In God We Trust," arches across the top of the coin, still intact despite the worn and somewhat dirty condition. The word Liberty on the left side shows signs of fading along the edges, but it remains identifiable. Turning the coin over, the classic wheat ears that define the wheat cent series are still present, though both stocks have softened details from decades of use. The words 1 cent in United States of America remain bold enough to stand out, even as dirt fills some of the recessed areas. The phrase e pluribus unum appears faint along the top, showing how continuous handling slowly reduces sharpness. The brown shading and dirt combined with scratches give the reverse a rougher appearance. But at the same time, it reinforces the authenticity of a coin that survived many hands and many years before being added to a collection. A 1958 wheat penny is considered one of the more common dates in the series because tens of millions were minted before the design was discontinued. This makes it easy to find today, but collectors still value it as the final chapter in the long-running wheat cent era that began in 1909. Even coins in lower condition, like this one, hold sentimental value because they mark the end of an important period in U.S. coinage. While the dirt and scratches do not help its visual grade, they do not erase its historical significance. In today's market, a 1958 Lincoln wheat penny without a mint mark in dirty condition and with visible scratches typically holds a modest value. Because this coin is very common, its worth mainly depends on condition. A heavily circulated and dirty example like this generally sells for around 5 cents to 20 cents, depending on how noticeable the wear and marks are. Collectors who seek higher-grade pieces usually look for coins with bright red or red-brown surfaces. So a fully brown, worn piece like this remains more of a budget-friendly collectible. Still, it fills an important spot for anyone completing a full wheat penny set or for new collectors starting out. Despite its low monetary value, the coin carries historical appeal. As the last wheat penny year, 1958 marks the closing moment before the U.S. Mint shifted toward a modernized design featuring the Lincoln Memorial. Every 1958 wheat cent, even one in dirty condition, represents that transition. Holding the coin gives a sense of the time when it circulated, passing through pockets, cash registers, and everyday transactions in late 1950s America. The scratches, discoloration, and dirt are proof of its journey and the many decades it survived before reaching the hands of a collector.